Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yeah, you get a lot of personal medals, citations, commendations, and then unit ones as well. I remember when we came back and we went to the Marine Corps recruiting office and met your recruiters. They were like, "Hey, you guys got like World War II stacks of." I mean, when you came back from post 9/11 deployments, there was just all sorts of stuff that we were getting medals for, ribbons. So there's a lot of them.
How did you get promoted?
I got out of boot camp as a E2, a private first class, and then I got promoted quickly to Lance Corporal, which is E3, and then to get to non-commissioned officer is Corporal, and I got promoted to Corporal to have what's called a cutting score. So it has to do with your performance, your PT, your physical PFT, physical fitness test score, and how well you do at your job. It's a scoring, it's a metric-based system for promotion. So I got above the cutting score and was promoted to corporal, and that's how it works for all promotions. It's a score-based system.
What was the highest rank you achieved?
Sergeant.
How did you stay in touch with your family, or did you?
We had one call. No, maybe two. So when you get to boot camp, you had a phone call when you first get there just to say, "I made it here. I'm alive. See you later." It was like that. It's that short, like 5 seconds. I think we had one call maybe before, in the middle of basic training, before going to Edson Range, which is where you start doing rifle training, and that was it. It was letters. Other than that, so a lot of letters, and then this was before cell phones, so I didn't even have a cell phone until I was about 21. I don't know. I was in my 20s before like cell phones. Even if you had one, they had started coming out by then, but the reception was bad. It wouldn't work wherever you were at anyway. So it was these phone booths. There'd be like a bunch of phone booths that you could go to, and there was calling cards, AT&T or MCI, or I can't remember what they were, but you'd buy a calling card at the PX, which is like a military store, and you'd go to a phone booth. You've probably seen them in the movies. I don't know if you've seen one in real life. They're not really around anymore, but you could call on a phone booth. We didn't have computers and email and stuff like that. It was basically mail and phone booth. And then towards the end of it, the end of my enlistment, I had a cell phone, and people were getting cell phones, like dumb phones, like the Nokia brick phone. That was the thing to have, and that's how nobody was really texting. It was just that. But on ship, there was no. On ship, it was loose lips sink ships, and so there was mail, and you could write letters, and they had these satellite phones that you had to say over, like you're talking on the radio. There was so much lag on it. You'd have to say, "Hey, I'm doing great. We're somewhere in the ocean. Over," and then they would hear that, and they could talk back. But we didn't get to use those very often. So yeah, you couldn't really ever say anything anyway.
Was there something special you did for good luck?
No, not that I remember. I didn't have like a lucky charm, or I didn't. No.
Tell me about your commanding officers.
Well, General Mattis was our commanding officer for the regimental combat team in Iraq. He was the most public one because he entered into the political arena, but he was very well respected in the Marine Corps. They called him Mad Dog Mattis, and everybody loved him in the Marines. So that was cool to be in his unit. And then as far as at the battalion level and the company level, your most accessible officer is usually the skipper, your captain. And we had, I had 2 company commanders, and then the hierarchy comes in, and you have a lieutenant, and then gunnery sergeants. Probably the most feared and respected commander, and he wasn't an officer, he was a gunnery sergeant. His name was Gunny Forey, and he's probably 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle. He was old. I mean, even when I'm in my 40s now, and he just, when you're in your 20s and somebody's in their 40s, you look at them as something ancient. He had gray hair, but he was extremely physically fit. He just was the Marines' Marine. He was an incredibly frightening and well-respected Marine. He was made to be a gunnery sergeant. He got kicked out of the Marines because he punched his officer. They got, I don't know, remember the details, but he had some involvement in the Bosnian Serbian War, and there's a book that he's in, and he had to write. The congressman had to allow him back into the Marine Corps because he got kicked out. But he had this reputation of being an enlisted man's Marine, and he would chew other officers out, which are above his rank. He'd see some 20-something-year-old lieutenant walking on the grinder and with a backpack on, and he would just scream at him. And he was very, very into discipline and military order, and he was just a frightening guy, but he was very well respected, the gunnery sergeant.
How did people entertain themselves?
Just shenanigans, you know. What young 20-something male Marines would do.
What did you do when on leave?
Go home and just relax as much as possible. Kind of just do the home thing, hang out with family. Didn't have a whole lot of it. There was not a whole lot of leave to go around. But yeah, it was just kind of being at home.
Continue any of those relationships?
Yeah.
Did you keep a personal diary?
I did. Just when I was in Iraq, I did. Other than that, no.
Do you still have it?
I do. I have these letters, and it's somewhere in a box, somewhere in storage.
Do you recall the day your service ended?
Yeah, everybody does, because when you end active duty, you're not actually out. You don't get your honorable discharge for like 4 more years because you go into the inactive ready reserves, and you can get called back, and that happens. A lot of people get called back. I got the letter to get called back, so I was prepared to go on a 3rd deployment, and it's called the casualty callback list. So if you're a sergeant in the infantry, and as sergeants in the infantry get killed or wounded, your name just keeps going up on the list. A lot of the guys I mentioned, they got called back. I got the letter and had to tell my job that, hey, I'm getting called back, and the 4 years for inactive reserves ended, so I never actually got the 3rd deployment. And then months after that, you get a discharge paper in the mail, honorable discharge certificate sort of thing. So I remember that, but I remember the moment when you get out is you go to, I think it's called like S1 or S2 shop. It's like the clerk or the admin shop of a company or a battalion, and they give you a DD-214, some sort of discharge paper. And when you get that, you feel kind of it all leave you. You know, it's like, hey, I can grow my hair out and I don't have to shave now. And it's just like that. You just walk in there and you processed out, and you're still on the base, you're still in your camis, but you're out at the same time, and it's just kind of it's a moment, it's an experience. You know, you kind of get flooded with all sorts of different emotions when it's all over, just like that.
Alright. Where were you? I don't know what that's asking.
Yeah, I think we already answered that one.
Let's skip it. What did you do in the days and weeks afterward?
After getting out?
Yeah.
Oh, this is related to getting out. I was in Camp Pendleton when I got out. I was already dating my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time. So I stayed in California for a while after getting out, and I stayed in the Oceanside area, and then moved back, and then we got married shortly after. We were married young, 22 and 23. So yeah, I was in Oceanside area, which is Southern California. And what did I do? I just started normalizing, trying to get readjusted into civilian life. I don't know what they do now, but there's no processing. Sort of like how people talk about Vietnam era. you come back from Vietnam deployment after a year, and here you go, go be a civilian. They were even talking about that when I was in, but there was no processing out. It was sort of the same. So you just kind of get a feel of being a civilian. So I just hung out in California for a while. I didn't get a job while I was there. I started college when I moved back. I moved back to Illinois is where I was at the time. That's where I enlisted out of, was in Illinois. So yeah, I started working in college and all that then. But when I was in California, no, I didn't do anything.
So you went to college after?
Yeah. Yeah, I started working. I did private security, global security. I traveled to more places after I was out of the Marine Corps, and I continued working with. It was everybody was Marines or law enforcement or a federal agent of some sort. So I kind of didn't leave. I left, and then I went right back into the same environment because that's how the organization was set up. So I traveled a lot, and I did that, and I went to college. I went to a community college, and they didn't have online school at the time, so I just had to piece it together as best as I could when I wasn't traveling, and I traveled a lot. So I got an associate's degree, and then I did the same thing with a bachelor's degree, which I could do online part of it, and then yeah.
Was your education supported by the GI Bill?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Did you take any college classes while you were in the service?
No.
Did you join a veterans organization?
Just recently I did from a friend. He was trying to get some young blood into the VFW, so I've joined. I've been to one meeting. I don't know a ton about it, but I'm officially a member of the Veterans of Foreign War.
Do you attend reunions?
They've had them. Yep, I've done one. They've had some other ones in Vegas, and I don't know if it was LA or something, but I didn't go to those. But I've been to one.
Where was that one at?
That was in it was outside of Cincinnati.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
That global security. Up until I did global security for 11 years, traveling all this stuff, working with the same kind of people, and then I got tired of traveling once we started having kids, and then that's when I got into small business, doing what I do now, so like 7 years ago.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Yeah, there's no way to separating that. Absolutely, it's a surreal experience, and it's going to inform your future thoughts.
Is there anything you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
No, you had a lot of questions. There's a lot here that I think that we covered.
All right, that's it.
I guess if there's one thing to add, I would advise strongly for anybody considering the military that when you join the military to think through thoroughly. I met so many people that joined for that GI Bill. They joined the National Guard, and then a war happens, and President Bush activates them on the federal level, and they never thought this would happen. They just wanted to get college. They ended up in Iraq, and they're missing a leg or an arm. Things like that can happen at any time. You have to really think what you're doing. It's not just, I'm going to get the GI Bill and get some experience here. Anything can happen in the blink of an eye, and it's not just a 4-year thing. Different levels of the military have different experiences. The Marine Corps, you don't leave the Marine Corps. If you're in the Marine Corps, it's not just a 4-year thing and I'm done. That becomes part of who you are. So I think it's very important for anybody considering the military to think through it very carefully, make sure they know what they're doing, what they want to do, and always understand that this is likely a lifelong commitment of some sort. It's very important.
All right, I'll wrap it up.
All right.